9 months after my sister's wedding, the original deed sat inside an evidence box in my attorney's office, sealed in a clear sleeve and marked with a court exhibit number. The champagne stain had dried into a pale amber tide across the lower half of the page. It smelled faintly sour when Elena opened the box, and for 1 second I could hear crystal glasses chiming again, feel the cold ocean air slipping through the ballroom doors, and see my mother's fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. I had not taken the deed from the wedding. That mattered. I had photographed the packet and walked away. The original had reached Elena months later through court-ordered document production, after a neutral vendor numbered every page, scanned it, and sealed it for safekeeping. But on Saturday, October 18th, 2025, it had not looked like evidence. It had looked like a wedding gift. My sister, Ashley, stood beneath an arch of white roses and eucalyptus in a silk gown that probably cost more than my first car. Behind her, the Pacific had turned silver beneath the late afternoon sky. Nearly 200 guests faced us, smiling as if they had been invited to witness something tender. Ashley slid a packet across the head table. "Sign over your Malibu estate," she said, bright enough for the microphone to catch every word. "Call it my wedding gift." A few guests laughed because they thought she was joking. I did not. The top page was a grant deed from Hart Pacific Holdings LLC to a company I had never seen before. Vail, Hart Coastal Holdings LLC. Beneath it sat a written consent naming me as sole manager, followed by preliminary escrow instructions. Whoever prepared the packet knew exactly how my estate was held and exactly which title I would need to place beside my signature. Nathan, my new brother-in-law, reached toward the lower corner of the page. Too late. I had already seen the reference code. It matched the structure of the cure notice my attorney had received from his lender the day before. I placed my hand flat on the packet. No. My mother's smile hardened. "Rachel, don't embarrass your sister. I'm not signing away a $12.5 million estate at a reception. It stays in the family," Mom said. "That house exists because this family made sacrifices for you." Ashley's mouth tightened. "You have more than you could ever use. Nathan and I need one thing from you." "You need my signature," I said. "That isn't the same thing." Mom lifted her champagne glass. For a moment, I thought she intended to drink from it. Instead, she threw it in my face. The champagne struck my cheek and collarbone, cold and sharp. A gasp moved through the room. I wiped my cheek with my napkin, looked at Ashley, then at the man beside her. "I already gave you a wedding gift worth more than the estate," I said. "Your husband has been receiving it for months." Ashley turned to Nathan so quickly her veil pulled against its pins. "You owe her what?" Nathan did not look confused. He looked at me and asked, "How much do you know?" Before I tell you what that question uncovered, I hope you're doing well today. Stay with me to see how this wedding unraveled. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happened next. At 38, I had spent enough years in logistics to recognize the difference between chaos and a process designed to look chaotic. My mother throwing champagne was chaos. The packet in front of me was not. Someone had prepared it carefully. Someone had opened a proposed collateral substitution file. Someone had arranged for a mobile notary to be waiting near the bridal suite. And someone had expected the pressure of a wedding to accomplish what private conversations had not. I looked past Ashley toward the edge of the ballroom. A woman in a navy suit stood beside the wedding coordinator with a leather notary case hanging from one hand. She had appeared on the printed schedule as document services, tucked between the family photographs and the cake cutting. That was when I understood the scene had not been improvised. I had arrived at the hotel shortly before 4 that afternoon. The drive from my estate had taken about 20 minutes along the coast, and by the time I stepped from my car, the wind had turned cool enough to lift the hem of my dress. I was not worried that anyone could steal my house with a loose sheet of paper. Hart Pacific Holdings LLC owned the estate. I was its sole member and manager. 6 weeks earlier, after learning my name appeared on a financial guarantee I had never signed, I had changed every company credential that mattered. My attorney had notified our registered agent, title insurer, and regular escrow contacts. A property fraud notification was active with the county recorder. None of that made forgery impossible, but it meant no legitimate transfer could happen without scrutiny. I went to the wedding because I still did not know how much Ashley understood. 3 times I had warned her. The first time, I told her plainly that my name appeared on a guarantee I had not signed and that Nathan's newest construction draw had been frozen. The second time, I told her that his lender had been shown information about my Malibu estate without my permission. 5 days before the wedding, I asked her to meet me alone and told her I had serious evidence involving Nathan's finances. She refused. "You always do this," she had said over the phone. "You turn everything into a risk report." "I'm getting married, Rachel. Whatever problem you think you found can wait until after the honeymoon." "It may not wait." "Then let your lawyer handle it. I'm not letting you poison the week because you can't stand not being in control." She ended the call before I could answer. I could not send her the full file. At that point, I did not know whether she would take it to Nathan or Mom, and Elena had already warned me not to circulate evidence while preservation notices were pending. But Ashley knew enough to understand there was a serious dispute. She chose to treat every warning as jealousy. Even so, I attended because I wanted to give her one last chance to speak to me without Mom directing the conversation. I also knew what Linda would say if I stayed away. She would tell everyone that I could not bear to watch my younger sister be happy. When I arrived, Mom was standing near the terrace, recording a long WhatsApp voice message with her phone held close to her mouth. Ashley rolled her eyes as she passed me. She could write 3 words, but she has to send a speech. Mom stopped recording the moment she saw me. Her expression changed so quickly that I noticed it, though I did not yet understand why. "You came," she said. "You invited me. I wasn't sure work would release you. I own the company, Mom." Her smile sharpened. "Then I suppose no one can tell you no." The sentence seemed petty at the time. Months later, after investigators recovered the messages she had sent that weekend, it sounded different. During the ceremony, Nathan kept his attention fixed on Ashley. He said the right vows. He held her hands carefully. When the officiant pronounced them married, his relief looked genuine. That was one of the hardest parts to accept later. A person could love someone and still use her. Affection did not make his choices harmless. At the reception, Ashley was radiant. She danced with Nathan, laughed with friends, and accepted compliments, as if the entire room confirmed something she had always needed to believe, that she had finally built a life no one could compare unfavorably to mine. I did not resent her for that. I resented being turned into the measure she believed she had to defeat. Dinner had just ended when she took the microphone. "There's one more family tradition," she announced. "My sister has always believed actions matter more than words, so tonight she's going to prove how much family matters to her." I looked at Mom. She was already reaching beneath her chair for the red leather folder she had used since we were children. Birth certificates, insurance policies, tax records, school documents, everything our family considered important had once passed through that folder. She carried it to the head table like an offering. Nathan's shoulders tightened. Ashley called my name. I could have refused to stand. Instead, I walked forward because I wanted to see what they had prepared. The ballroom lights reflected off the packet's metal clip. Mom positioned herself on one side of Ashley, Nathan on the other. It was not a request. It was staging. After I refused and Mom threw the champagne, the room divided instantly. Some guests stared at her. Others stared at me, waiting to see whether I would shout, cry, or retaliate. I did none of those things. My calm made Mom angrier. "She has everything," Mom told the room. "Everything. And she cannot give her own sister one home." "It isn't your home to give," I said. Ashley looked from me to Nathan. "What money has he been receiving?" Nathan lowered his voice. "Not here. You let her say that in front of everyone, and now you want privacy?" Mom stepped between them. "Rachel is twisting a routine business arrangement because she wants attention." That sentence told me more than she intended. I had never told her the lender described anything as a business arrangement. "What arrangement?" I asked. Mom's eyes flicked toward Nathan. He answered for her. "Your father intended to support the project. My father died before your loan existed. He left documentation. He left a limited guarantee for his own project. Nothing for yours." Ashley looked at Mom. "You told me Rachel had already approved the sponsor support." Mom reached for my wrist. "Enough." I stepped back before she could touch me. "I'm leaving," I said. No one here has permission to use my name, my company, or my property. Ashley's face changed. For the first time that day, she looked less angry than frightened. If you walk out now, the lender shuts us down Monday. There it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a sentimental wedding gift. A deadline. How long have you known about Monday? I asked. Ashley hesitated. Mom answered instead. Everyone knew there was paperwork to finish. I didn't. You make paperwork your religion, Mom snapped. Don't pretend this is about principle. It became about principle when someone put my name on money I never agreed to guarantee. A murmur moved through the guests nearest us. Nathan looked toward the ballroom doors, calculating who had heard. I took out my phone and photographed every page I could see. The grant deed, the LLC consent, the preliminary escrow instructions, the borrower certification Ashley had already signed. Nathan reached for the packet. I pulled my phone back, not the papers. I'm not taking your documents, I said. I'm preserving what you put in front of me. Mom closed the red folder around the packet. I walked out of the ballroom with champagne drying against my skin. The hallway outside was quiet, except for the muted bass of the band and the distant rush of traffic along the coast. I sent the photographs to Elena, then called her. She answered on the second ring. I thought you were at the wedding, she said. I am. They brought me a deed. There was a pause. Who is they? My mother, Ashley, and Nathan. There's a reference code on the escrow instruction. I sent you the pictures. I heard keys moving beneath her fingers. While she checked, I looked back through the glass doors. Ashley stood several feet from Nathan now. Mom was speaking rapidly into her ear. The notary in the navy suit had disappeared. Elena returned to the line. I have the cure notice Lenders Council sent yesterday, she said. The reference family matches, but this packet isn't from the lender. What is it? A proposed collateral substitution package opened by the borrower's broker. It has no approval attached, so they built it themselves. Yes. I pressed the napkin once more against my cheek. Would my signature have saved the loan? Not by itself. But it would have given them a real signature, a real asset, and something they could use to argue that the earlier guarantee was meant to be ratified. Through the glass, Nathan looked up and saw me watching him. Elena's voice became very quiet. The lender didn't ask you for this. Someone built a cure package around your wedding. 6 weeks before Ashley's wedding, the first sign of trouble arrived in an envelope so ordinary that I almost handed it to my assistant. It was addressed to Heart Pacific Holdings LLC, care of my corporate office in Santa Monica. The return address belonged to Meridian Bridge Capital, a private lender I had never worked with. The envelope contained a routine-looking request for confirmation of an outstanding guarantee. The amount listed beside my name was $14,300,000. I read the page twice. The letter referenced a construction loan issued to Pacific Crest Development LLC and identified me as the additional guarantor. It asked me to confirm my current net worth, acknowledge the funded balance, and verify that no material changes had occurred in the assets supporting my guarantee. My Malibu estate appeared in the attached asset schedule. I did not call the number printed on the letter. Fraud often depended on urgency. A forged invoice. A fake security alert. A request that looked official enough to make someone act before thinking. I searched Meridian Bridge Capital independently, found its public office number, and asked to speak with someone in loan administration. The woman who answered confirmed the letter was real. She asked for the reference number. When I gave it to her, the line went quiet for several seconds. Miss Hart, are you calling to update the guarantor certification? I'm calling because I have never heard of this loan. Another pause followed. Could you verify the last 4 digits of your taxpayer identification number? No. You called me an additional guarantor. You can tell me who authorized the account. I'm not able to discuss the file until we complete identity verification. That's fine. My attorney will contact your legal department. I ended the call before she could move me through whatever verification process the file expected. My assistant, Claire, had been standing in the doorway with a tablet tucked against her chest. Do I cancel your 11 o'clock? She asked. Cancel everything after 10. She looked at the letter on my desk. Is it bad? I don't know yet. That was true. I had seen enough paperwork errors to know a wrong name could travel through a system for months. A guarantee of that size, however, did not come from a misplaced digit. I scanned the letter, saved it to our secure document system, and called Elena Park. Elena had represented my company for 7 years. She was precise, without being theatrical, which was one of the reasons I trusted her. She never used panic to make herself sound valuable. "I need you to verify a loan," I said. "What kind?" "A construction facility, more than 14 million funded. They list me as guarantor." "Did you sign anything?" "No." "Do they identify collateral?" "My estate." Her voice changed, not dramatically, but enough for me to hear that the matter had moved out of the category of administrative mistake. "Send me the full packet. Don't call the lender again, don't call your family, don't contact the borrower." "I don't know who the borrower is yet." "Then let's keep it that way until we have the documents." By noon, Elena had reached Meridian's outside counsel. Because I was disputing my identity as guarantor, they would not send her the full loan file immediately. They did, however, provide a summary, confirming that the loan existed, that multiple construction draws had been funded, and that my name appeared on a personal and corporate guarantee dated 9 months earlier. The project land itself was the primary collateral. My estate had been listed as additional sponsor support, along with my company's financial statements and a schedule of liquid assets. That distinction mattered. No lender had transferred $14 million solely because someone typed my address into a spreadsheet. The project owned land. It had an appraisal, permits, a budget, and a development plan. My supposed guarantee had strengthened the file enough to support a larger facility and continue funding when construction costs increased. Someone had not invented an entire project. They had attached my credibility to a real one. Elena arrived at my office shortly after 3 with 2 associates and a forensic accountant named Simon Hale. Meridian's counsel had agreed to provide a limited document set under a confidentiality arrangement while they investigated. The first page Simon placed in front of me was a guarantee bearing my signature. At a glance, it looked correct. The slope of the R, the narrow loop in the H, the sharp line beneath my surname, every feature belonged to me. The signature itself was real. The document was not. Elena placed a second page beside it. "Do you recognize this?" It was part of a limited guarantee I had signed 3 years earlier for my father's final commercial project. The amount had been capped at $750,000. The guarantee had applied only to cost overruns on one warehouse conversion, and it had expired when that loan was paid. The signature on the new document had been lifted from that older file. "They used the same scan," Simon said. "Not a similar signature. The same image. Compression artifacts match." I studied the new guarantee. It referenced a borrower I still did not recognize and contained language I would never have accepted. Unlimited liability for principal, interest, legal fees, environmental claims, completion costs, and deficiencies after foreclosure. "I would not sign this," I said. "We know," Elena replied. "The question is how they persuaded Meridian that you did." The file contained tax returns from 2 years earlier, a personal financial statement, a copy of my driver's license, and organizational information for Heart Pacific Holdings. Most of it had once been legitimate. 3 years earlier, when my father's health was failing, I had provided similar documents for his warehouse project. That had been the only time I allowed family urgency to shorten my usual process. My father had been in and out of treatment. His contractor threatened to walk. The lender demanded additional support before releasing the final construction draw. Dad had sat across from me in a private room at the hospital, thinner than I had ever seen him, apologizing for asking. The guarantee had been limited, reviewed, and real. I had understood the amount. I had understood the risk. What I had failed to do was insist that every copy of the supporting file be returned or destroyed after the loan closed. My mother had kept family financial records for years. At the time, allowing her to hold a copy had not seemed dangerous. It had seemed efficient. I did not spend the afternoon blaming myself. Regret could wait. Containment could not. Elena drafted a formal dispute notice, stating that I had never authorized the new guarantee, never approved the use of my estate, and never consented to the release of my personal or corporate information. Meridian agreed to freeze the pending construction draw, while its legal and fraud teams reviewed the file. The money already funded could not simply be pulled back. The next draw could be stopped. That was the first useful fact I received all day. We sent preservation notices to Meridian, the borrower, the broker, the title company handling the project loan, and every entity identified in the summary documents. The notices required them to preserve emails, text messages, electronic signature records, call logs, underwriting files, and all versions of the guarantee package. I changed the credentials for Heart Pacific Holdings, replaced the company's digital signature certificate, and restricted authority to issue entity resolutions. Our registered agent received written instructions not to accept amendments or consents without confirming them directly with Elena. I also contacted the title insurer for the Malibu estate and the escrow firm my company normally used. Neither could block every possible fraudulent filing, but both could flag any attempt to use my holding company or property in a transaction. I activated the county's property recording notification service, so I would be alerted if a document was recorded against the estate. By 6 that evening, I had done everything I could without knowing who was behind the loan. Then Elena called me into the conference room. "We have a borrower name," she said. I sat across from her. "Who?" "Pacific Crest Development, LLC. That means nothing to me." Simon turned his laptop around. A state business filing filled the screen. The company's manager was listed as Nathan Vale, Ashley's fiancé. For several seconds, I read the name without speaking. Nathan had been part of our family for almost 2 years. He had eaten Thanksgiving dinner at my table. He had walked through the gardens at my estate and asked how I managed coastal insurance costs. He had once joked that the house was large enough for Ashley to get lost in after they married. I had laughed. "What exactly did his company receive?" I asked. Simon opened a disbursement summary. The loan had funded in stages. The first draw covered land acquisition and pre-development costs. The second funded site work. 3 later draws paid construction invoices, consultants, and interest reserves. A 6th request had been submitted but had not yet been funded. More than $14 million had already moved. The pending draw was just under $2 million. "When did Meridian first contact me directly?" I asked. "This morning," Elena said. "The account went into heightened review because the project exceeded its original budget. They sent updated guarantor confirmations before considering the 6th draw. So no one verified me at closing?" "They believe they did." Simon opened another document. "The file contains email confirmations from an address close to yours, but not identical. 1 character was added before the domain. There was also a telephone verification log using a number registered to a prepaid business account. Who answered? The notes identify the person as your financial administrator." "I don't have a financial administrator." "We know that now." The fraud had not depended on one forged signature. It had been built as a system. A real project. Real land. Real invoices. My real financial history. A false email address. A false phone contact. A broker willing to keep verification inside controlled channels. That made the scheme more dangerous. But it also made it easier to understand. People rarely committed complicated fraud alone. "Who was the broker?" I asked. "Martin Voss," Elena said. "Voss Capital Advisory." The name was unfamiliar. Nathan's was not. I left the office after 8. On the drive home, Ashley called me to discuss seating arrangements for the wedding. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. "I need to ask you something about Nathan's company." She sighed before I finished. "Can we not do this tonight? The florist just changed the installation fee, and Mom is acting like eucalyptus is a personal attack. Have you reviewed Nathan's construction financing with an independent attorney?" Silence held for a moment. "Why would I?" "Because your name may be connected to the project." "It isn't. Nathan keeps business separate." "Has anyone asked you to sign documents for Pacific Crest Development?" "No." "Has Mom?" Her tone sharpened. "What are you implying?" "I'm saying my name appears on a guarantee for Nathan's loan. I did not sign it." This time, the silence lasted longer. Then she laughed once, without humor. "That's impossible. It's real enough that the lender froze his next draw today." "You called his lender?" "The lender contacted me. Rachel, his company has employees, contractors, buyers. You cannot walk into someone's financing and start making accusations. I did not enter his financing. Someone put me there. You always assume the worst when you don't control something. This is not about control. Do not sign anything connected to Nathan's project. Do not accept any transfer of property or company interest until you have your own lawyer review it. My own lawyer? Not Nathan's, not Mom's. Someone who represents only you. She exhaled slowly. You've never liked him. That isn't true. You tolerate him because I'm marrying him. I am telling you that a lender has a guarantee with my copied signature on it. And I'm telling you Nathan would never forge your name. I haven't said he did. You didn't have to. I stood in my dark kitchen, looking through the windows toward the ocean. Ashley, listen carefully. My attorney has sent preservation notices. This is serious. So serious you waited until 6 weeks before my wedding to invent it? I learned about it this morning. Then maybe you should wait for facts before trying to ruin my life. I am trying to keep you from signing something you don't understand. Her voice became cold. You always think you're the only person in the room who understands money. That is not what I said. It's what you always mean. She ended the call. I did not call her back. Not because I had nothing more to say, but because repeating the warning would not make her hear it. I documented the time and substance of the conversation and sent a summary to Elena. The next morning, Meridian provided a more complete disbursement schedule. I read every funded amount, every date, every certification. Nathan's company had been receiving money tied to my name for 8 months. The earliest draw had been approved 2 weeks after Mom introduced Nathan to Martin Voss at a charity luncheon I had declined to attend. The newest request carried Nathan's electronic signature and a certification that all guarantors remained informed and supportive of the project. I had never been informed. I had never been supportive. Elena stood beside the conference table while I reached the final page. Do you want me to contact Ashley's attorney? She asked. She doesn't have one. Then she needs one. I told her. Did she understand you? Yes. That was the part I could no longer soften for myself. Ashley had not failed to understand the warning. She had decided I was the problem before she heard the evidence. I closed the disbursement file and looked again at Nathan's name. My sister was marrying the man who had been spending my signature. Nathan had been part of our family for 21 months before I learned his company had borrowed against my name. During that time, he had perfected the role my mother most wanted him to play. He was attentive without appearing desperate. He remembered birthdays, brought wine to dinner, and listened to Mom's stories as if each one revealed something important about the world. He called her Linda at first, then began calling her Mom after he proposed to Ashley. She pretended to object for less than a week. My mother had always wanted a son. Nathan understood that before I did. The first time Ashley brought him to a family dinner, he arrived 10 minutes early with flowers for Mom and a bottle of bourbon my father used to buy. He said he had asked Ashley what Dad liked because he wanted to make a good impression. Dad had already been dead for nearly a year. Mom cried when she saw the bottle. Nathan did not look uncomfortable. He stood beside her until she recovered, then asked where she wanted the flowers. That was his talent. He knew how to make attention feel like loyalty. He worked hard. I never doubted that. Pacific Crest development had begun with small remodels and 2-unit conversions before Nathan moved into larger residential projects. He could talk about zoning, construction costs, investor expectations, and neighborhood demand without sounding like he had memorized a pitch deck. He also knew when to stop talking. Around Mom, he spoke about legacy. Around Ashley, he spoke about freedom. Around me, he spoke about numbers. I had not disliked him. That was the version Ashley preferred to tell later because it made my warnings easier to dismiss. The truth was less convenient. I had respected his ambition and questioned his judgment. Those were not the same thing. 6 months after we met, Nathan visited the Malibu estate for my father's memorial dinner. The house sat above the coast behind a line of cypress trees, with terraces facing the water and an older guest wing built into the slope. I had purchased it through Heart Pacific Holdings 4 years earlier, after my company completed a major expansion. The seller had needed a fast, clean closing, and I had bought it for less than the amount Ashley later repeated to wedding guests. Renovations and market appreciation had raised the estimated value to $12.5 million. But the estate was not a pile of cash waiting to be divided. It carried taxes, insurance, maintenance costs, and a modest commercial mortgage inside the holding company. Nathan spent part of that memorial dinner studying the property. At first, his questions were ordinary. How old is the guest wing? Does the Coastal Commission limit exterior work? What does insurance cost this close to the water? Then the questions became more specific. Did you buy it personally or through an entity? Does the entity own anything else? Is the mortgage attached to the property or the company? I answered the first two in general terms and declined the third. He smiled. Occupational curiosity. I'm sure. Ashley heard us and laughed. Rachel thinks every question is due diligence. Usually because people only ask about ownership when they want to know what can be reached, I said. Nathan lifted his glass. Fair point. He did not push again that evening. At the time, I read the exchange as ambition mixed with poor boundaries. After Meridian's letter arrived, I wrote down everything I remembered. Elena asked me to separate facts from interpretation. His exact words matter, she said. Your impression of why he asked does not. I gave her the questions as accurately as I could recall them, along with the date and the names of people who had been standing nearby. She did not tell me the memory proved anything. It did not, but it belonged in the timeline. 3 days after Meridian froze the 6th draw, Simon found an investor presentation Pacific Crest had circulated the previous spring. It had been distributed privately to prospective equity partners, but one recipient had forwarded it to Meridian during the lender's internal review. Elena opened the file on the conference room screen. The first pages showed architectural renderings of a hillside residential development outside Los Angeles. Glass walls, landscaped courtyards, ocean-facing terraces, and enough imported stone to make every unit look more expensive than it was. The project was real. So were the permits and the land. Then we reached the sponsor profile. Nathan's photograph appeared beside a description of his development experience. Beneath it was a paragraph about multi-generational private capital support and access to unencumbered coastal assets. The next page displayed an aerial photograph of my estate. It did not name me. It did not say Pacific Crest owned the property. It called the house an affiliated sponsor asset available to strengthen project liquidity. That wording is deliberate, I said. Simon nodded. It implies control without making a direct ownership representation. Could investors reasonably believe it belonged to the project? Yes. Did Meridian see this? It was included in an early sponsor package. My company's name did not appear, but the photograph was unmistakable. I had commissioned it for an insurance valuation. The image was not public. Where did he get this? I asked. Elena moved to the file properties. The presentation was created 7 months before the engagement announcement. The image itself came from a PDF generated by your insurer 3 years ago, the same period as my father's limited guarantee, the same collection of family financial records. I looked at the photograph until the house stopped feeling like mine and became what Nathan had turned it into, proof of someone else's access. There was an email attached to the presentation. Nathan had sent it to Martin Voss, the loan broker, asking whether the estate should be named directly. Voss replied, "Keep it general until family restructuring is complete. The asset will become available after the marriage." I read the sentence twice. "What restructuring?" I asked. "We don't know yet," Elena said. "When was this sent?" 11 months ago. Ashley and Nathan had announced their engagement 8 months ago. I took out my phone and called her. She answered from a bridal salon. I could hear voices, music, and someone discussing alterations in the background. "Is this urgent?" she asked. "I'm in the middle of something." "Yes. Did Nathan ever tell you my estate was being presented to investors as support for his development?" The background noise seemed to recede, though she did not move. "What are you talking about? His investor deck includes a photograph of my house." "That doesn't mean anything. Developers use reference images. It's labeled as an affiliated sponsor asset. Then it's probably an example. It came from a private insurance file." Ashley lowered her voice. "Are you investigating my fiancé now?" "His lender is investigating a guarantee with my forged signature." "You already told me that." "And you told me it was impossible." "Because it is." "Then explain why his broker wrote that my estate would become available after your marriage." She was quiet. For a moment, I thought she might finally ask me to send the document. Instead, she said, "Mom already explained this. That answer changed the conversation. What did Mom explain? That Dad wanted his assets kept inside the family. Nathan's project would give all of us something lasting, instead of letting everything sit in accounts and properties only you control. My estate was never Dad's. He helped you. He gave me advice. He did not buy my company or my house. You always reduce everything to legal ownership, because legal ownership determines whether someone has the right to pledge an asset. Ashley exhaled. Mom said you agreed in principle to support Nathan once we were married. I did not. She said you were waiting until the structure was finalized. She lied. The word landed harder than I intended, but I did not take it back. Ashley's voice sharpened. You don't get to call her a liar because you've decided to rewrite a family agreement. There was no agreement. She said Dad discussed it with you before he died. Dad never mentioned Nathan's project. He could not have. Nathan had not bought the land yet. You signed papers for Dad's warehouse project with a fixed cap and an expiration date. So you admit there were papers. I admit there is an old file someone used without my permission. You keep saying someone because you want me to accuse Nathan or Mom for you. I want you to hire a lawyer who represents only you. I do not need a lawyer to protect me from my own family. Neither did I until 6 days ago. A woman near Ashley asked whether she was ready to try the veil. Ashley covered the phone, answered her, then returned to me. I am not doing this now. When will you do it? After the wedding. The lender will not wait until after your honeymoon. You keep trying to make me afraid. I'm trying to make you informed. No, Rachel. You're trying to be necessary. She ended the call. That accusation stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. There had been a time when being necessary mattered too much to me. When Dad's business faltered, when Mom overspent, when Ashley needed rent after leaving her first job. I had known how to solve the problem before anyone else finished describing it. I had not paid every debt or surrendered everything I owned. But I had liked being the person who could restore order. That was not what I was doing now. I was not offering to fix Nathan's loan. I was telling Ashley to step away from it. She heard both actions as control because Mom had spent years teaching her that my caution was a form of dominance. Later that evening, Mom called me. She did not ask about the forged guarantee. She said, "You upset your sister during her final fitting." I told her Nathan used my estate in an investor presentation. Your estate is part of this family's security. No, it isn't. Your father would be ashamed to hear you say that. Dad understood ownership. Your father understood obligation. I stood beside my office window, watching headlights move along the street below. Did you give Nathan my insurance valuation? I gave him information that would help him understand the strength of the family. That document was private. So is everything when you want to keep it from us. Did you give him my tax returns? Mom paused. It lasted less than 2 seconds, but it was the first useful answer she gave me. You're making ugly accusations, she said. I asked a question. You always hide behind technical language. Did you give Nathan or Martin Voss copies of the financial file from Dad's warehouse loan? Your father intended those documents to help the family. That is not permission. He trusted me to manage what he left behind. He did not leave my signature behind. Mom's breathing changed. Then she changed the subject. Ashley has spent her whole life watching you receive every opportunity. That is not relevant to a forged guarantee. It is relevant to why you refuse to share. I am not discussing the house with you again. You don't get to close a subject because the truth makes you uncomfortable. The truth is that I own it. No, Mom said. The truth is that your father helped build the life you now claim as yours alone. I ended the call before she could turn theft into another family sacrifice. The next morning, Elena obtained a supplemental underwriting exhibit from Meridian. The exhibit had not been part of the initial limited production because it was filed under future collateral rather than current guarantor support. The heading read, Post-Marriage Sponsor Restructuring. The document stated that, following the marriage of Nathan Vale and Ashley Hart, Hart Pacific Holdings would transfer the Malibu estate into a newly formed family entity. That entity would then grant a deed of trust, in favor of Meridian, as additional collateral. The proposed transfer was not described as optional. It was written as though I had already agreed. My name appeared beneath an unsigned manager consent line. Ashley's name appeared in a schedule of future beneficial owners. Nathan's appeared as managing member. The document had been drafted 10 months earlier. 2 months before Nathan proposed. I looked at the date, then at the engagement timeline Elena had placed beside it. Nathan had not yet asked Ashley to marry him when the loan file began treating their wedding as a financial trigger. This was structured before the proposal, I said. Elena nodded. Did Nathan write it? The metadata shows the first draft came from Martin Voss's office. Nathan revised later versions. And Mom? We don't have her name on this version. Not yet. I read the clause again. It did not merely assume Ashley and Nathan would marry. It assumed their marriage would give them access to my property. Someone had not looked at their relationship and discovered an opportunity. Someone had built the financial plan first, then written the wedding into it. Elena closed the file. Rachel, she said, someone wrote your sister's marriage into a financial document before Nathan ever proposed. By the time Elena told me someone had written Ashley's marriage into a financial document before Nathan ever proposed, I still did not know whether my sister had seen that document. 6 weeks later, standing in the hallway outside her wedding reception with champagne drying on my dress, I was about to learn how much she had agreed not to question. Elena was still on the phone when the ballroom doors opened behind me. Ashley came through first, gathering the front of her wedding gown in both hands. Nathan followed several steps behind her. Mom stayed close to him, carrying the red leather folder against her chest. Give me your phone, Ashley said. I ended my call with Elena. No, you photographed private documents. You placed them in front of me and asked for my signature. They weren't yours to take. I didn't take them. Mom glanced toward the ballroom doors. Lower your voices. Guests can hear you. You threw champagne in my face in front of them, I said. Privacy stopped being your concern several minutes ago. Nathan reached for Ashley's arm. She pulled away. What has he been receiving? She asked me. You said it was worth more than the estate. Money from a construction facility carrying my name as guarantor. How much money? Nathan looked at me before I answered. $14,300,000 has already been funded. Ashley stared at him. The anger left her face so quickly that she looked younger than 32. That's not possible. Nathan spoke quietly. The facility is larger than the amount funded. That wasn't my question. The project required more capital than originally expected. Did you borrow $14 million from Rachel? Not from Rachel directly. I watched Ashley try to fit that answer into a version of her marriage she could still understand. Mom stepped forward. This is exactly why financial matters should not be discussed in a hallway. Then why did you bring financial documents into the ballroom? I asked. She ignored me. Ashley, your husband's company has a legitimate loan. Rachel agreed to support it before your father died. She is now exploiting a technical dispute because she wants to punish you. I did not agree to Nathan's loan. You signed support documents for Dad's warehouse conversion 3 years ago. The guarantee was capped and expired when that loan was repaid. Nathan rubbed a hand across his mouth. The lender received a continuation package. Not from me. Ashley looked between us. What does that mean? It means someone copied my signature from Dad's old file and attached it to a new guarantee. Nathan's expression did not change enough. Ashley noticed. You knew she was claiming the signature was forged? She raised the dispute 6 weeks ago. You told me her lawyer was delaying the draw because she wanted more control. I told you the lender had questions about sponsor support. That is not the same thing. No, I said. It isn't. Mom's voice sharpened. Nathan believed the authorization was valid because I told him your father had arranged it. Ashley turned toward her. You told me Rachel had already approved everything. She approved the family's access years ago. That sentence has no legal meaning, I said. Mom looked at me with open contempt. That is how you speak when you want to pretend love is a contract. No, that is how I speak when someone uses love to hide a forgery. Nathan glanced down the corridor. The mobile notary in the navy suit was standing near the elevators now, pretending to read something on her phone. I pointed toward her. Who hired the notary? No one answered. Ashley? My sister's eyes moved toward Mom. Mom said, the broker arranged routine closing support. For a surprise wedding gift? It was supposed to be convenient. Convenient for whom? Nathan stepped between us. Rachel. The document would not have completed a transfer tonight. It would have allowed the broker to submit a proposed collateral replacement. I know, He hesitated. That was the first moment he understood I had spoken to lender's counsel. I continued. The deed, LLC, consent, escrow instruction, and manager certification would have created a package containing my real signature. Martin Voss could then argue that I intended to contribute the estate and that the earlier guarantee should be ratified. Ashley looked at Nathan. You said she had already agreed. Nathan did not answer. I turned to her. Who prepared the packet? Martin's office. Who told Martin I would sign? Mom said you would. I asked who told Martin. Ashley's lips parted, then closed. Mom said, this interrogation ends now. It ends when I leave. Until then, Ashley can answer. She is a bride, not a criminal suspect. She signed something in that packet. Ashley's expression changed. I had not known that with certainty. I had seen her name on the borrower certification before Nathan pulled the papers away, but the page had been partially covered. What did you sign? I asked. It wasn't a loan. What was it? A certification for the lender. Nathan said her name in warning. Ashley. She faced him. You have had months to explain this. I'm answering her. Mom gripped the folder tighter. The document only confirmed the family contribution was being processed. I held out my hand. Let me read it. No, Mom said. Ashley? She looked at the folder, then at me. It said the estate contribution had been voluntarily approved and that the transfer documents would be executed before the cure deadline. You certified that? Mom said it was preliminary. Did the document use the word preliminary? I don't remember every word. You signed it last night. It was one page in a closing packet. Did it state that I had voluntarily approved the contribution? Ashley's shoulders lifted with a breath. Yes. When had I told you I approved it? You didn't. The hallway became quiet except for the music passing through the ballroom walls. I had expected entitlement. I had expected denial. Hearing her admit the contradiction so plainly still hurt. You signed a statement saying I had agreed. I said, after I told you my name appeared on a guarantee I did not sign. I didn't know the guarantee was fake. I told you it was not mine. You said it was disputed. I said my signature had been copied. You say things in the most extreme way possible when you want people to listen. I asked you to hire an independent attorney because you wanted someone to frighten me. I asked you not to sign anything connected to the project. Mom said that document was only for lender review. Documents sent to lenders are not less real because your mother tells you they are temporary. Ashley wiped beneath one eye before the mascara could run. You are acting like I understood all of this. I'm asking whether you understood one sentence. Had I agreed to give you my estate? She looked at the carpet. No. Nathan moved closer to her. Ashley, the cure certification was based on the family restructuring Linda described to us. Stop saying family restructuring, she snapped. You meant her house. Mom opened the red folder and removed the packet. There is still time to resolve this without destroying the project. I stared at her. How? Sign the transfer documents tonight. On Monday, Martin will submit them to Meridian with the updated sponsor package. The lender can approve the collateral substitution, release the final draw, and everyone can address the older paperwork afterward. There it was, in her own words. A real signature tonight. A lender submission Monday. The forgery treated as an inconvenience to be negotiated after the money was secured. I'm not signing. Then hundreds of people suffer because of your pride. Meridian has not approved this substitution. They will if you cooperate. You don't know that. Martin does. Martin is the broker who helped put a false guarantee in the file. His confidence is not legal authority. Ashley turned toward me. If you walk away, the lender declares default Monday morning. I had already heard her say it inside the ballroom. Now I wanted the part she had not answered. How long have you known Monday was the deadline? She did not respond. Ashley, when did you learn the final draw was frozen? A few weeks ago. How many? 3, maybe 4. Before my second warning. She looked toward Nathan. I continued. When did you learn the estate was supposed to be the replacement collateral? Mom said it was one option. When? 2 weeks ago. I remembered our meeting at the bridal brunch near the end of September. I had told her Meridian had received information about my estate without my consent. She had accused me of trying to create a crisis because I disliked being excluded from wedding decisions. She had already known the estate was being discussed as the cure. You sat across from me while I told you Nathan's lender had information about my property, I said. You already knew they wanted it. I thought you were refusing because you were angry. I said I had not authorized it. You always think you're the only person who understands money. I did not ask you to understand the loan. I asked you to believe one sentence. She looked at me. I did not sign. Ashley's chin trembled, but she kept her voice hard. You could still save the project. That is not an answer. People will lose their jobs. That does not give you my house. You would not even feel the loss. The measure of theft is not how much the owner can afford to lose. Mom's face tightened. Listen to yourself. Your sister is begging you on her wedding day, and you're giving her a lecture. No, I'm refusing a transfer. You want to humiliate her. You designed this in front of 200 guests. We gave you a chance to be generous. You gave me an audience. Nathan tried again. Rachel, we can structure protections. The estate doesn't have to remain in the borrower entity after stabilization. Once the next phase closes, we could refinance and return it. You cannot promise to return property you do not own. The project has substantial value. Then it should survive underwriting without a forged guarantor. His jaw tightened. That is not how distressed construction financing works. I know exactly how distressed financing works. That is why I know you are asking me to absorb the risk you hid from everyone else. Ashley stepped closer to Nathan. Did you know her signature was copied? He looked at Mom before answering. I knew there was a dispute over the authorization. When? I don't remember the exact date. You remember every draw date, I said. His eyes met mine. This is between my wife and me. Not while my name secures your debt? Mom placed the packet back into the folder. We're returning to the reception. Rachel can leave if she intends to keep punishing everyone. I took my phone from my purse and sent Elena a short written summary of what Ashley had admitted, the certification, the Monday deadline, and the 2-week notice about the estate. Then I looked at my sister. The estate will not transfer. I will not ratify the guarantee. I will not sign an LLC consent. I will not rescue the 6th draw. Her eyes filled, but she did not apologize. You really are going to let his company collapse. Nathan's company reached this point because he took money using a guarantee I did not give him. Mom said Dad wanted us to share everything. Dad is not here to confirm the promises she puts in his mouth. You always have to win. This is not winning. I looked at the red folder, the stained dress, and the man Ashley had married hours earlier. This is me refusing to lose what you decided belonged to you. Mom opened the ballroom door. You are destroying this family. I stopped beside her. A family that needs a coerced signature to survive destroyed itself before I ever said no. I left the hotel without returning to the reception. On Monday morning, Meridian formally declined the proposed collateral substitution and issued its default notice to Pacific Crest Development. Elena was reviewing the notice when she received a call from the wedding planner, a woman named Marisol Vega. Marisol said she had spent the weekend replaying what happened at the head table. She had been told the document presentation was a sentimental family surprise. After seeing the champagne thrown and hearing the argument, she realized she had helped stage an attempt to pressure me into signing legal papers. She offered to provide the messages she had personally received. Elena did not ask her to search anyone else's phone or forward conversations she had not participated in. Marisol sent the direct text thread between herself and Ashley, then agreed to sign a declaration confirming the dates and context. Most of the messages concerned microphones, timing, and where I should stand. One instructed Marisol to place the mobile notary near the bridal suite without listing her professional title on the guest-facing schedule. Another said the folder should be brought out immediately after Ashley's speech, before I had time to leave the table. The final message had been sent 3 days before the wedding. Ashley had written, "If she says no in private, make sure she has to say no to my face in front of everyone." The message Ashley sent the wedding planner did not prove she had forged my signature. It proved something else. She knew I would refuse in private, and she helped design a public setting where she believed refusal would become too painful. For several days after the wedding, that distinction mattered to me more than I expected. I could not decide whether it made her behavior better or worse. Ashley had not known the full scope of the loan, but she had known the estate was mine, known I had never agreed to transfer it, and chosen humiliation as leverage. Elena told me to stop trying to assign everyone a final degree of guilt before the evidence was complete. People rarely enter a fraud at the same moment, she said. One person designs it, another person benefits without asking questions. Someone else discovers the truth and decides it is too expensive to stop. Which one is Ashley? We'll know when she gives us her phone. She had not. By the Wednesday after the wedding, Meridian had filed an action seeking appointment of a receiver over Pacific Crest's project. The lender had not accused me of wrongdoing. Its attorneys acknowledged my dispute, suspended reliance on the contested guarantee, and reserved every claim against the people who had submitted it. Pacific Crest opposed the receiver. Nathan's filing argued that the project remained viable if Meridian restored the final draw. His declaration described my refusal to transfer the estate as an unexpected family dispute that had disrupted an agreed restructuring. He still called it agreed. Elena read that sentence aloud in her office, then placed Nathan's declaration beside the photographs I had taken at the reception. He is trying to separate the forged guarantee from the wedding packet, she said. The old guarantee becomes a misunderstanding. Your real signature was supposed to cure it. And because I refused, he wants the court to believe I changed my mind. That is the story. It requires me to have agreed in the first place. Yes. Can he prove that? He does not need to prove it today. He only needs to create enough confusion to delay the receiver. That was the first lesson the lawsuit taught me. A lie did not have to survive forever to be useful. Sometimes it only had to delay the truth until more money moved. The judge granted limited expedited discovery because Pacific Crest was asking to restart construction funding while the authenticity of its sponsor documents remained disputed. Meridian produced the versions of the guarantee it had received. Martin Voss was ordered to preserve and produce the borrower submission files, including document histories and correspondence relating to my supposed authorization. No one handed us Linda's private accounts. No one unlocked Nathan's phone for us. At that stage, we received only material connected to the loan and the documents the borrower had already put at issue. It was enough to begin. Simon Hale arranged the pages across Elena's conference table in chronological order. On the left sat the limited guarantee I had signed 3 years earlier for my father's warehouse conversion. On the right sat the guarantee Meridian received for Nathan's development. The old document was 11 pages. The new one was 37. The first page of each looked unrelated. Different borrowers, different lenders, different projects. But the signature page of the new guarantee had been built from the old one. The image of my signature was identical down to a faint gray dot beneath the final letter in heart. The dot had come from dust on the scanner glass when the warehouse file was digitized. They did not imitate you, Simon said. They reused you. He enlarged the two signatures until the lines filled the screen. The same gray dot appeared on both. The document also contained a manager certification for Hart Pacific Holdings. My name was typed beneath a signature block, identifying me as sole manager. The signature image had been copied again, then reduced slightly so it would fit the narrower line. My original limited guarantee had capped my exposure at $750,000 and applied only to specific completion costs. The new guarantee removed the cap and expanded liability to principal, interest, legal expenses, environmental obligations, and any deficiency after the project collateral was sold. One signature image had been made to approve obligations I had never seen. Elena watched me read the pages. You can take a break, she said. I don't need one. You don't have to prove anything by staring at it longer. I'm not proving anything. I turned back to the old file. The warehouse conversion had been my father's last project. He had spent most of his career buying neglected industrial properties and turning them into usable commercial space. By the time he began that one, his health had already started to fail. The contractor found structural damage after demolition. The original budget no longer worked. Dad's lender refused the final construction draw unless someone with stronger liquidity provided limited support. He asked me at the hospital. The room had smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee from the family waiting area. His hands had looked too large against the thin blanket. Not because they had changed, but because everything else about him had become smaller. I would not ask if there were another way, he said. I had brought my own attorney. I had read the guarantee. I negotiated the cap down and added an expiration provision. The warehouse was completed, leased, and sold. The loan was repaid. I had not blindly sacrificed myself. My mistake had been believing the danger ended when the debt did. Mom had coordinated paperwork during Dad's treatment. She held copies of his insurance, business records, and closing files. After the warehouse sold, I asked whether she wanted help organizing the remaining documents. She said she had already handled everything. I believed her. For years, the red leather folder had represented the safest place in our family. Mom kept birth certificates in it. Dad's military discharge papers. Ashley's college records. My first company filings. Whenever someone needed proof of who we were or what we owned, Mom opened that folder. I had never considered that access itself could become a weapon. Simon placed a document index beside me. The source file for your old signature was a PDF called Heart Guarantee Final, he said. Meridian received the new package as a flattened PDF, so the editing layers were gone. Voss's production included an earlier draft with an embedded signature image. That image retains the old file name. Where did Voss get it? We are still tracing that. His production includes an email attachment with the original PDF, but the sender address is an alias. Whose alias? The display name says Family Office Administration. I don't have a family office. We know. The email address had been created less than 2 weeks before the attachment was sent. It used a generic commercial domain and had no public connection to me, my company, or Linda. The message itself was brief. Attached are the sponsor records previously authorized for family development purposes. Rachel prefers not to participate directly until closing structure is final. No name appeared beneath it. Nathan had been copied. So Nathan received the old file, I said. Yes. And he did not contact me. No. He accepted an email from a fake family office. Voss had already told him the authorization would be handled privately. That does not make the email real. No? Nathan's attorney later argued that he believed Linda was acting as the family representative. The email did not mention Linda, but other correspondence showed she had attended calls with Voss and Nathan. She was sometimes identified as family liaison, a title that sounded important and meant nothing. I read through the early messages. Nathan asked whether my participation needed to be disclosed to outside investors. Voss answered that the sponsor relationship should remain private until the family entity was formed. Nathan asked whether my company would sign the guarantee directly. Voss said the paperwork would be handled through existing family authority. No one defined what that authority was. No one asked me. The first altered guarantee draft appeared 3 days later. It still contained errors. My company's mailing address was outdated. The estate value had been copied from an old insurance schedule. The draft referred to me as both individual guarantor and trust beneficiary, even though no trust owned the property. Each later version became cleaner. Someone was feeding Voss corrections. The holding company's current name appeared in the 4th draft. My correct office address appeared in the 5th. The 6th included an accurate estimate of the estate's remaining mortgage balance. That information wasn't in Dad's warehouse file, I said. Simon nodded. Not all of it. Where did it come from? We have not established that yet. Only a small number of people knew the remaining balance. My controller knew. Elena knew. The commercial lender knew. I knew. Mom had once seen a year-end statement when I helped her prepare a family net worth summary after Dad died. At the time, she told me she needed it for estate planning. I had given her a number. Not an account statement. A number was enough. The next file Simon opened was a document history exported from Voss's loan management system. It showed when each draft was uploaded, revised, renamed, and sent to Meridian. The earliest altered file had been created at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. According to Voss's contact log, Linda did not introduce Nathan to him until the following Thursday at a charity luncheon. That cannot be right, I said. Simon checked the dates again. The file history is system-generated. We also have the email invitation for the luncheon. So Voss was editing a guarantee for Nathan's project before Mom introduced them. Or before she publicly introduced them. That distinction mattered. The charity luncheon had become part of my family's official story. Mom claimed she happened to seat Nathan beside a useful broker. Nathan said the meeting was fortunate timing. Ashley described it as proof that opportunities appeared when people stopped being negative. The file history showed the opportunity had been prepared in advance. Elena turned to another production set. We also received the borrower's initial capitalization plan, she said. The plan assumed a sponsor with substantial outside assets would support cost overruns. The sponsor was not named, but the projected net worth and real estate values closely resembled mine. The plan had been drafted before Nathan spoke to Meridian. Before the loan application, before the charity luncheon, someone had decided my balance sheet belonged in the project, while Nathan was still telling investors he had not selected a lender. My phone rang. Ashley's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. What do you want? Her voice was strained. Nathan says you're trying to take his company. I'm disputing a guarantee I did not sign. He says Meridian would not have moved for a receiver if you had handled this privately. Meridian moved for a receiver because his project ran over budget and his sponsor documents are fraudulent. You don't know he created them. I know he received the old file. I know he was copied on emails from a fake family office. I know he revised a financial plan that included my assets. Mom said she had authority. From whom? Dad. Dad was dead. You know what I mean. No, Ashley, I don't. She lowered her voice. Nathan says you can still stop the receiver if you tell Meridian the family arrangement was misunderstood. That would be a lie. It would buy time. For what? To sell units, finish construction, make everyone whole. That was Nathan's argument when he took the third draw. It was his argument when he took the fourth and fifth. Every new dollar was supposed to create enough success to excuse the previous lie. He is my husband. That does not change the documents. You don't understand what this is doing to him. I understand exactly what his company received. I'm not asking you to give him the estate now. You asked me to give it to you 5 days ago. I didn't know everything. You knew I had not agreed. She stopped speaking. I continued before she could reshape the conversation. If you want to help yourself, hire independent counsel and preserve your phone. Do not delete messages. Do not sign a declaration Nathan's lawyer prepares. Do not repeat anything Mom tells you without verifying it. You make them sound like criminals. I'm telling you how not to become responsible for someone else's version of events. Do you hear yourself? You're talking to me like I'm a witness. At the moment you are. She ended the call. I wrote down the time and summarized the conversation for Elena. Not because I wanted to build a case against my sister, but because every discussion now carried the risk of being remembered differently later. I hated that. I also understood why it was necessary. That evening, Elena received one more production from Voss. It was a calendar export documenting his first meetings related to Pacific Crest. The public charity luncheon remained on the schedule. So did an earlier private video conference. The participants were Martin Voss and a person listed only as L. Hart. The meeting occurred 10 days before the luncheon. 9 days before Linda introduced Nathan to Voss, the first altered version of my guarantee had already been created. Elena looked at the calendar, then at me. The luncheon wasn't the beginning, she said. I looked at my mother's initial beside the private meeting. No, I said. It was the cover story. Ashley asked to see me 3 days after Elena discovered the private video call between Mom and Martin Voss. She did not call me directly. She sent a message through Elena's office asking for a meeting somewhere Nathan and Mom could not enter without permission. That detail told me she was frightened. It did not tell me whether she was ready to be honest. We met in a small conference room at Elena's firm on Thursday afternoon. Elena sat beside me, while Ashley was offered the opportunity to bring independent counsel. She declined. I'm not hiring a lawyer just to talk to my sister, she said. Elena closed the door. Then understand that I represent Rachel, not you. Ashley folded her arms. She was still wearing her wedding ring, but the skin beneath her eyes looked raw, as if she had not slept. I know, she said. Everyone represents Rachel. I did not respond. She looked at me. Nathan and Mom lied to me. That may be true. Maybe. It does not answer what you knew. Her eyes filled immediately. I came here because I thought you would at least listen. I am listening. You don't look like it. What would listening look like to you? I don't know. Maybe not treating me like I'm on trial. You signed a certification sent to a lender. You helped arrange a public attempt to make me transfer property. You asked to meet after the loan defaulted. Questions are not punishment. Ashley looked at Elena, then back at me. Can she leave? No. Of course. You asked to meet somewhere safe. Elena's office is safe. For you. For the record, too. She gave a short, bitter laugh. You document conversations with your own sister now? I document conversations about a $14 million loan carrying my forged signature. That ended the argument. Ashley opened her purse and removed a folded tissue. Mom told me you had promised Dad you would support a family development project. She said the warehouse guarantee was supposed to establish a permanent family credit structure. That was false. I know that now. When did you begin to doubt it? At the wedding. Before or after I said the signature was copied? She pressed the tissue between her fingers. Before that, I thought you were trying to back out. Why? Because that's what Mom said. You had spoken to me? You never told me everything. I told you my signature appeared on a guarantee I did not sign. I told you Nathan's draw was frozen. I told you the lender had information about my estate without permission. I told you not to sign anything and to hire your own attorney. You said it like a lawyer. I said it in English. Ashley looked away. Elena placed a copy of the certification on the table. It was the document Ashley had signed the night before her wedding. Have you read this since the reception? Elena asked. No. Read the highlighted paragraph. Ashley did. The certification stated that Hart Pacific Holdings had voluntarily approved a transfer of the Malibu estate into Vail Hart Coastal Holdings, and that execution of the deed and manager consent was scheduled before the lender's cure deadline. It also stated that all beneficial owners had been informed of the transaction and had authorized the borrower to rely upon it. I watched Ashley reach the final line. You signed that Hart Pacific Holdings had approved the transfer, I said. Mom told me the approval already existed. Did you see it? No. Did Nathan? He said Martin had it. Did you ask to read it? I was getting married the next day. That is not an answer. She put the page down. No, I didn't ask. Why not? Because I trusted them. You did not trust me. You were trying to stop everything. I was trying to stop a transaction I had not authorized. That is not how it felt. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me how it felt. Ashley's expression changed. The defensiveness did not disappear, but something beneath it became visible. It felt like you were doing what you always do, she said. Waiting until everyone had made plans, then arriving with facts and warnings so you could prove we should have listened to you from the beginning. I did not wait. The lender contacted me 6 weeks before the wedding. That was 6 weeks before my wedding. The timing was not my decision, but you took over the entire room the moment you knew. I secured my company and my property. You made Nathan's financing the only thing anyone could talk about. Nathan made my signature part of his financing. She wiped beneath one eye. You always have the right sentence. I do not want the right sentence, Ashley. I want an honest one from you. She stared at the certification. Mom said the estate would only be inside the family company temporarily, she said. Nathan said once the first completed units sold, they would refinance. The house would come back out. Back to whom? You. Then why was your company receiving ownership? So Meridian would accept it. That explains why Nathan wanted it. It does not explain why you believed you could give it back. She hesitated. I thought it would still be ours. Ours? The family's. I let the word remain between us. That was the belief beneath every document and every accusation. The estate belonged to me only until someone else in the family needed it badly enough. You called it a wedding gift, I said. That was Mom's idea. You repeated it. She said it would make the moment feel positive. You hired a notary. Martin's office hired her. You approved putting her on the schedule without identifying her profession, because Mom said you would be uncomfortable if you felt pressured. I looked at her. Ashley heard the contradiction after she said it. If I had already agreed, I asked, why did anyone need to hide the notary? She pressed her lips together. If it was voluntary, why did you need 200 witnesses? I thought you would make it difficult in private. That is not the same as refusing. You had already refused. Yes. Her fingers tightened around the tissue. I continued. So you knew I had said no. You believed the public setting would make me change my answer. I thought once you saw what it meant to me, you thought embarrassment would succeed where consent had not. I didn't think Mom would throw anything at you. That was not the only harm. Ashley stood and crossed to the window. Below us, Traffic moved along the avenue in slow afternoon lines. I spent my whole life being told you were the responsible one, she said. You got the better school, the company, Dad's trust, the house. Every time I wanted something, Mom said we had to be careful because Rachel had plans. Mom told me you needed more because I could take care of myself. Ashley turned. She told me the opposite. I know. She said Dad invested everything in you because you were the safer bet. She said I gave up opportunities without even knowing it. Did she name one? She didn't have to. She did. Ashley's face tightened. She gave you an explanation that made your resentment feel like evidence, I said. You did have more. I built more. Dad helped you. He advised me. He introduced me to 2 clients. He did not build my company. You bought a $12 million house before I owned anything. I bought it through a business entity after 15 years of work. It also has a mortgage, taxes, insurance, and operating costs. You always make everything sound like a spreadsheet, because you keep treating the total value as if it were money sitting in a gift box. Ashley looked toward the conference table. I wanted it. The simplicity of the admission stopped me. She drew a breath. I wanted the estate, she said, not only because Nathan needed collateral. I wanted something you could not quietly replace with a larger version later. I did not interrupt her. I wanted everyone to come to my house for holidays, she continued. I wanted Mom to say I had made the family proud. I wanted one thing that made people look at me before they looked at you. You could have wanted all of that without taking mine. I know. Do you? Yes. Her voice broke on the word. She returned to the table and opened her phone, but she did not hand it to anyone. She showed me a folder of photographs instead. They were interior design images. White stone floors, pale oak cabinets, curved sofas, brass lighting, a nursery with an ocean view. The heading read, Malibu House. You made this before the wedding? I asked. 2 months before. Before Mom told you the estate was the only cure? Ashley nodded. So you already believed it would become yours. Mom said Dad had always intended the house to support both of us. Dad died before I bought it. She said the principle was the same, meaning anything I acquired later could be reassigned if she called it family. Ashley closed the folder. Elena placed another set of documents on the table. These are preliminary payment records produced by Pacific Crests Bank under the receiver proceeding, she said. They are not final conclusions, and they do not automatically establish criminal responsibility. Ashley glanced at the first page. What am I looking at? A deposit for a leased luxury vehicle registered to you, Elena said. Part of the payment came from Pacific Crest's marketing account. Nathan had told Ashley the car was a wedding present from his personal funds. The next record showed a transfer to the hotel hosting the reception. The description identified it as a brand promotion event. Ashley frowned. The hotel gave us a partnership discount. The project paid part of the remaining balance. That does not mean I knew. No, Elena said. It means you benefited. Knowledge is a separate question. A third payment had gone to the floral designer. Another covered a deposit with a jewelry vendor. Ashley pushed the pages away. Nathan handled the wedding budget. You told me his project was short of money, I said. He said it was a temporary cash flow problem. And when he paid for a car, a coastal venue, imported flowers and jewelry, you did not ask where the cash came from? He had investors. He had restricted project funds. I didn't know that. You did not want to know. She looked at me as if I had struck her. That is not fair. What would have happened if you had asked? He would have explained it. Then why didn't you? Because I was planning a wedding. No. Because the answer might have forced you to give something up. Ashley began to cry in earnest then, but I did not move around the table to hold her. The tears were real. So were the payments. Both truths could exist at the same time. I did not steal project money, she said. I have not said you did. You are making me sound like I helped them. You signed a false certification. You staged the deed presentation. You accepted expensive benefits while Nathan said his company was desperate for cash. I believed my husband. You also believed Mom. Yes. And every time I gave you information that challenged them, you decided I was jealous. She covered her face for several seconds. When she lowered her hands, she looked exhausted. What happens to me now? That depends on what you do next. Can you tell Meridian I didn't understand? I will tell the truth about anything I personally know. Will you tell them Mom lied to me? if the evidence supports it. Will you help me get my own attorney? I will give you names. Will you pay for one? No. Her expression hardened again. You could afford it. That is not the issue. It is always the issue with you. No, Ashley. The issue is that hiring your lawyer would put me back in the role of managing the consequences of your decisions. I came here for help. You came here asking me to classify you as innocent before you handed over the evidence. She glanced at her phone. Elena said, Your messages may help establish what Linda and Nathan told you. They may also show what you knew. You should preserve the device and let your own attorney arrange a forensic copy. Ashley locked the screen. I'm not giving you my phone. No one asked you to surrender it to Rachel, Elena said. I advised you to preserve it. Mom says Nathan's lawyers can handle everything together. Mom is now connected to the broker who created the first altered guarantee draft, I said. Ashley stood. That is an accusation. It is a documented meeting. You want me to turn against my husband and my mother. I want you to stop letting them decide what truth you are permitted to see. They'll know I came here. Did you tell them? No. Then why are you afraid they'll know? She did not answer. I gave her the names of 3 independent attorneys on a sheet of paper. None worked with my company. None represented Meridian. You choose one, I said. You pay the retainer. You tell that person everything, including the certification and the wedding plan. Ashley took the paper but left the payment records on the table. At the door, she looked back at me. I really did think the house would come back to you. You thought that because you needed it to be true. She opened the door and walked away without promising to preserve her phone. The following week, Marisol Vega signed a formal declaration about the wedding presentation. She described when Ashley first requested it, who approved the microphone setup, and how the mobile notary had been positioned outside the bridal suite. Marisol attached the complete text thread she had exchanged directly with Ashley. One message called the presentation, a family moment no one can walk away from. Another instructed Marisol to seat me where I could not leave the head table without crossing in front of the guests. Ashley had also written that I would fold for family once everyone was watching. I had already seen the final message after the wedding. If she says no in private, make sure she has to say no to my face in front of everyone. The first time I read it, I saw evidence of coercion. The second time, after Ashley admitted how badly she wanted the estate, I saw something more painful. Linda had taught her that my boundaries were selfish. Nathan had given her a financial reason to break them, but neither of them had written that message for her. Nathan asked to meet 11 days after Ashley came to Elena's office. By then, the receiver had taken control of Pacific Crest's operating accounts, frozen discretionary spending, and begun separating legitimate construction expenses from personal charges. Nathan was still allowed access to project records, but he could no longer authorize payments without approval. His attorney requested a settlement conference before Meridian pursued broader fraud claims. Elena agreed on one condition. Nathan had to produce the emails and internal finance records he intended to rely on before the meeting. He arrived at her office wearing the same navy suit he had worn to my father's memorial dinner 2 years earlier. I remembered because Ashley had once said it made him look trustworthy. That afternoon, it only made him look prepared. His attorney, Daniel Price, sat beside him. Elena sat beside me. Simon joined by video from a separate screen, ready to pull documents from the production database. Nathan looked thinner than he had at the wedding. His wedding ring was still on his hand. "Thank you for meeting," he said. "I'm here because your attorney requested it." "I know." Daniel placed a folder on the table. Nathan wants to explain the sequence of events from his perspective. Elena did not reach for the folder. "We have his declaration." The declaration was filed under time pressure. "So was the guarantee," I said. Nathan looked at me. "I did not create that guarantee." "When did you learn it was false?" "I didn't know it was false." "When did you learn I had not personally confirmed it?" He hesitated. Daniel intervened. Nathan relied on representations from Linda Hart and Martin Voss that prior family authority remained effective. "That was not my question," I said. Nathan folded his hands. "At the beginning, I believed Linda had authority to coordinate the sponsor package." "Authority from whom? Your father?" "My father was dead before the loan application. Linda said he had established a family structure before he died." "What structure?" I was told the warehouse guarantee was part of an ongoing arrangement. You received an expired limited guarantee for a different borrower and believed it created permanent access to my balance sheet? I believed the supporting documents had been updated through the family office. I do not have a family office. I know that now. When did you know it? He looked at Daniel. Elena opened a document on the screen behind us. The email had been sent 5 months before the wedding. It came from Nathan's controller, Rebecca Sloan, and carried the subject line, Guarantor Verification Concern. Rebecca wrote that the signature block on the latest sponsor certification did not match the font or formatting used in the entity documents. She also noted that the email address used for confirmation differed from my company's public domain by 1 character. Her recommendation was direct. Pause the third construction draw until Rachel Hart or her counsel confirms the guarantee in writing. Nathan's reply appeared below it. Do not contact Rachel directly. Linda is handling family authorization. Any disruption now will jeopardize the entire capital stack. I looked at Nathan. Is that your email? Yes. So before the third draw, your own controller told you the signature and email were questionable. She was being cautious. She recommended direct verification, which would have caused a family conflict. It would have revealed the truth. I didn't know what the truth was. You knew enough to stop. Nathan's expression tightened. You are reducing a project with employees, investors, buyers, and contractors to 1 email. No. I'm identifying the moment you were given a choice. Daniel turned toward Elena. The third draw had already been substantially committed. A delay would have triggered defaults with contractors and vendors. Elena replied. Committed is not the same as funded. Nathan leaned forward. You want to know why I kept going? The land had been purchased. Site work was underway. We had signed contracts, buyer deposits, payroll, and interest obligations. If I stopped everything because 1 controller disliked a signature format, the project died before we knew whether there was a real problem. There was a real problem, I said. I know that now. You knew there might be one then. That is different. It is only different if uncertainty gives you permission to use someone else's name. He looked away. Simon pulled up the draw history. The first 2 draws had been funded before Rebecca's warning. The third request was submitted 3 days after Nathan told her not to contact me. The fourth came 7 weeks later. The fifth came after another internal note raised concerns about sponsor authorization. The sixth had been frozen when Meridian finally contacted me. 3 funded draws had followed the first written warning. Nathan had signed each borrower certification, stating that all guarantors remained informed and supportive. You certified I was informed, I said. I believed Linda was updating you. Based on what? She knew private details about your holdings. That proved she had information. It did not prove she had permission. She had your records. Again, access is not authority. He rubbed his thumb across the edge of his wedding ring. You had always helped the family before. I helped Dad with 1 limited guarantee. You paid Ashley's rent after she lost her first job. For 3 months. You covered part of Linda's mortgage after your father died. For 6 months while probate was being organized. You always stepped in. That did not give you the right to assume I would guarantee your company. I thought once the project stabilized, we could explain everything. You mean once the loan made enough money, I would be pressured to accept what you had done? I thought you would see the value. You thought success would turn fraud into a family investment. Nathan exhaled through his nose. You make it sound calculated. It was repeated. That is what makes it calculated. Daniel opened the folder he had brought. Nathan is prepared to cooperate with Meridian and the receiver. He can assist in completing the project and protecting the buyers. Under independent control, Elena said. He built the development. He also certified false information. Nathan looked at me. If the receiver replaces me, construction slows, costs rise, the contractors you claim to care about get hurt. That was the argument he had used every time the project needed another draw. If I objected, innocent people would suffer. If he continued, the future would somehow justify the past. I had heard versions of that argument all my life. Dad needs 1 signature. Mom needs 6 months. Ashley needs help until she finds herself. Nathan needs 1 more draw. The emergency changed. The expectation did not. What are you asking me to do? I said. Tell Meridian you will not oppose reinstating funding under a supervised structure. I already told them I will not oppose verified payments to contractors through an independent escrow. That is not enough to keep the project moving at full speed. It is enough to pay legitimate invoices. The project needs flexibility. You used flexibility to pay for a wedding. His eyes hardened. I did not authorize every marketing expense. You signed the draw certifications. Those expenses were categorized by staff. They benefited your wife. My wife did not know the source. That may help Ashley. It does not help you. He leaned back and looked at the ceiling for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I love her. I believe you may love her. His eyes returned to mine. But love does not explain why you let her stand in front of 200 people and demand my house. I thought you would sign. That is not an explanation. I thought once you saw the project would fail, you would help. You knew I had disputed the guarantee. I thought you were trying to force better terms. Because that is what Linda told you? Yes. And you believed her instead of asking me? I had already taken millions based on what she said. By then, asking you directly risked everything. That was the point where you stopped being deceived and started protecting the deception. He did not answer. A week later, Rebecca Sloan agreed to give a sworn declaration to the receiver. She had resigned from Pacific Crest 2 months before the wedding. Nathan told staff she left for personal reasons. Her declaration said she resigned, after he instructed her to keep my name on the draw certifications without direct confirmation. Elena and I met Rebecca in a neutral conference room with attorneys present. She was 42, soft-spoken, and visibly uncomfortable being involved. I should have escalated sooner, she said. You warned him before the third draw, I replied. I warned him internally. I didn't contact the lender. Why not? Nathan said Linda represented the Hart family. Martin Voss said direct contact would violate a private family arrangement. I was afraid of accusing people of fraud without proof. What changed? Rebecca opened a folder. After the fourth draw, I saw an email chain Nathan did not know had been copied to me. She handed the pages to Elena. Nathan had written to Linda, Rebecca is insisting on direct confirmation. Are you certain Rachel authorized this version? Linda replied, Rachel authorized the family years ago. She always makes everything harder than it needs to be. Proceed. Nathan answered, if Rachel denies this later, we're exposed. Linda's final response was one sentence. By then, the project will be too valuable for her to let fail. I read the exchange twice. Nathan had not merely wondered whether the formatting was wrong. He had named the precise risk. I might deny the authorization later. He continued anyway. Rebecca said, I asked him after that email whether we should stop. What did he say? He said stopping would destroy everyone for a technical problem that Rachel would eventually forgive. Did he use the word forgive? Yes. Simon asked whether she had contemporaneous notes. Rebecca produced a dated notebook page and an email she had sent herself after the conversation. The message recorded Nathan's statement while it was fresh. Once the project is profitable, Rachel will forgive the paperwork. It was not the kind of sentence anyone could explain as a misunderstanding. The problem was not technical. The paperwork represented my consent. Nathan understood that consent was missing. He simply believed my future forgiveness could be budgeted like a construction contingency. Ashley learned about Rebecca's declaration through her own attorney. She had finally hired one of the lawyers from the list I gave her. Her attorney requested a meeting with Nathan's counsel and invited Elena to attend because my disputed guarantee remained central. I did not attend the first session. Elena later told me only what had been placed on the record or shared with permission. A week after that, Ashley asked to speak with me again, this time with her attorney present. She arrived without her wedding ring. I read Rebecca's declaration, she said. I waited. Nathan told me he only learned your signature was disputed 6 weeks before the wedding. He knew there were serious problems months earlier. He said Rebecca was overly cautious. That is what he told us too. Ashley looked down at her hands. He knew before the third draw. Yes, he knew before he proposed. The first warning we have is after the engagement planning began. The financial structure existed before the proposal. She nodded slowly. He let me tell everyone the project was his success. It was his project, built with your credit, built partly with a guarantee attached to my name. She looked at me. Did he marry me because of the estate? I don't know. You think he did. I think he knew your marriage was written into the collateral plan before he proposed. I cannot tell you what he felt when he asked you. Would you stay? I'm not deciding that for you. I'm asking what you would do. I would separate the question of whether he loved me from the question of whether I could trust him. Her eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. He says he was trying to protect our future. He protected the project. He says they were the same thing. That is a useful belief for someone who wants you to absorb his consequences. Ashley looked away. I keep remembering the wedding. He knew I was going to ask for the house. Yes. He knew the deed was meant to cover the earlier paperwork. Yes. And he let me stand there. Yes. This time, I did not soften the answer. He used me to pressure you. Yes. Ashley pressed her lips together. I used myself too. That was the first time she said it without blaming Mom or Nathan in the same sentence. Her attorney placed a hand near her file but did not interrupt. Ashley continued. I told myself I was doing it for our marriage. I liked that everyone was watching. I wanted them to see you give me something important. You wanted proof that you mattered as much as I did. I wanted proof that I mattered more. I appreciated the honesty even though it hurt. What happens to Nathan now? She asked. The receiver will decide whether he has any operational role. Meridian will pursue its claims. Licensing authorities may review his conduct if the findings involve his contractor or broker credentials. Quote, will he go to prison? I don't know. She nodded, then asked, are you going to destroy the project? No. Her eyes lifted. I will not ratify the guarantee. I will not invest. I will not ask the receiver to shut down legitimate work. If independent escrow can pay verified contractors from controlled funds, I will not oppose it. Why? Because the electricians and buyers did not forge my signature. She began to cry quietly. I don't understand how you can protect them after what he did. I am not protecting Nathan. It will help his project survive. It will help other people survive his project. That distinction was the decision I wanted Ashley to learn, but I could not force her to understand it. The following Monday, Simon called Elena and me into a video meeting about the fifth draw. He had been tracing every payment classified as a financing, advisory, or sponsor relations expense. Most went to legitimate attorneys, engineers, title vendors, and consultants. One payment repeated after every funded draw. The recipient was Harrow Advisory LLC. The first transfer was $75,000. Later payments ranged from $90,000 to $125,000. In total, Harrow had received more than $400,000 from Pacific Crest. What service did they provide? I asked. The invoices say Family Capital Coordination, Sponsor Documentation, and Strategic Liaison. Who signed the engagement? Nathan. Who performed the work? That's the problem. We cannot find employees, an office, or a public operating history. The company had been formed in Delaware with a registered agent that served thousands of entities. Its mailing address led to a private mailbox in California. Simon followed the tax records produced to the receiver and found that the mailbox was paid with a credit card ending in the same 4 digits as an account used for Mom's country club dues. That did not prove she owned the company. Then he found a reimbursement request attached to the fourth draw. Harrow had billed Pacific Crest for travel, meals, and family stakeholder meetings. One receipt came from a coastal restaurant Mom visited every Thursday. Another came from the hotel where she held her charity committee meetings. A third showed a reservation under the name Linda Hart. Elena asked, do we have beneficial ownership records? Not yet. The receiver has requested them through the company's bank and formation agent. What about the payments after each draw? They were automatic under the consulting agreement. Harrow received a percentage every time Meridian released money. I looked at the total again. Nathan had spent the loan on land, construction, payroll, and the lifestyle he wanted everyone to admire. But someone else had been paid simply for delivering access to my name. 2 weeks later, the bank produced the beneficial ownership certification Harrow had submitted when opening its account. The listed controlling person was Linda Hart. Simon turned the document toward me. Nathan spent the loan, he said. Your mother was charging him for the privilege. Harrow Advisory had no employees, no office, and no clients other than Nathan's development company. It had been formed 8 months before Pacific Crest received its first construction draw. The company's consulting agreement entitled it to a percentage of every funded advance, plus reimbursement for travel, meals, and family capital coordination. My mother had been paid more than $400,000 for delivering access to my name. That was the cleanest description Simon could give me. The money had not gone directly from Meridian to Mom. It moved through Pacific Crest after each draw, disguised as a legitimate project expense. Nathan signed every payment request. Martin Voss approved the invoices as sponsor-related costs. Harrow then paid my mother's mortgage arrears, country club dues, travel bills, and credit card balances. She had spent years accusing me of valuing money more than family. All that time, she had been invoicing one for access to the other. The receiver's attorneys obtained Harrow's bank records through court-authorized discovery. The records did not prove every part of the fraud by themselves, but they gave us a map. 3 days before the first altered guarantee was created, Mom paid Martin Voss $10,000 from Harrow's account under the description Structuring Retainer. 2 weeks later, Pacific Crest reimbursed Harrow for the same amount. The month after that, Harrow received its first percentage fee. She paid him before Nathan officially met him, I said. Elena nodded. And then the project reimbursed her after the loan process began. Simon displayed the transaction dates beside the calendar records. The private video conference between L. Hart and Martin Voss came first. Then, the altered guarantee draft. Then the charity luncheon, where Mom publicly introduced Nathan to the broker as if the meeting were accidental. The sequence was no longer circumstantial in the ordinary sense. It was a pattern supported by independent records. Nathan had benefited from the plan. Mom had built the path into it. Elena warned me not to treat Harrow's ownership as the final answer. We know Linda controlled the company, she said. We know it received money. We still need evidence connecting her directly to the altered documents and the false representations. She had the old file. We believe she did. She met Voss before the public introduction. Yes. She was paid after every draw. Yes. And that still isn't enough? It is enough to justify more discovery. It may be enough for civil claims. It is not yet the same as proving who changed which document and what each person intended. That distinction frustrated me, but I understood it. The truth did not become stronger because I wanted it to move faster. 2 weeks later, Meridian and the receiver obtained a court order requiring Linda to produce records connected to Harrow Advisory, the family financial files, and communications with Martin Voss and Pacific Crest. Her attorney objected that the requests were overly broad. The judge narrowed them. Linda still had to produce Harrow's operating records, relevant electronic communications, and any copies of my financial documents used in connection with Nathan's project. A neutral electronic discovery vendor collected the files. Linda's attorney supervised the process. Elena's team did not enter Mom's house, open her drawers, or seize whatever they wanted. The red leather folder appeared because Mom's own lawyer listed it on the production inventory. The vendor photographed it where it was found, assigned it an evidence number, and scanned each page in order. The original remained sealed while both sides received identical electronic copies. When Elena told me the folder had been produced, I asked to see the inventory before the contents. The entry read, Red leather expanding folio containing Hart family tax, property, insurance, corporate, and estate records. Family records? That was still what Mom called them. The first section contained ordinary documents. Dad's death certificate. Old insurance policies. Ashley's college tuition statements. Copies of tax returns. Then came the warehouse loan file. My limited guarantee was there, including the original scanned signature page with the gray speck beneath my name. Behind it sat printed drafts of the guarantee used for Nathan's project. The earliest draft still carried handwritten corrections. Change cap. Use current LLC name. Update office address. Add coastal property. The handwriting was Mom's. I knew the shape of her capital A, the way she crossed a T too high, the tight curl she used when correcting a number. A document examiner later compared the notes with known samples. My recognition alone did not establish authorship, but the comparison supported it. One margin note beside my estate value read, "She will object if asked too soon." Another said, Marriage makes family contribution easier to explain. I stared at that sentence until Elena closed the page. You don't have to keep reading today, she said. I do. No. You want the discomfort to end, and reading faster will not do that. She was right. I took a breath and opened the next file. It was a draft declaration written for my mother. The first paragraph described Linda Hart as a grieving widow who had trusted her daughter Ashley and future son-in-law to manage a family investment. The second claimed Ashley had taken copies of my financial records without permission. The third said Nathan had submitted the guarantee without Linda's knowledge. The final paragraph stated that Mom had learned of the fraud only after the wedding. The document had been created 3 weeks before the wedding, before I refused the deed, before Meridian declared default, before Mom claimed she was shocked by everything. She had prepared her innocence in advance. Ashley's name appeared more often than Nathan's. According to the draft, she had pressured Mom, removed documents from the red folder, communicated with Voss, and concealed the loan from the family. Nathan was described as financially reckless but dependent on information Ashley provided. Mom had written herself as the only person who had not understood. She planned to blame both of them, I said. Elena looked at the document. That is what the draft suggests. She called Ashley the daughter who valued family. She also created a version of events in which Ashley carried most of the documentary responsibility. I thought about every time Mom compared us. Rachel is cold but capable. Ashley is loving but fragile. Rachel can survive anything. Ashley must be protected. The comparison had never been about love. It had been about function. I was the daughter expected to absorb damage. Ashley was the daughter kept close enough to direct. If the plan succeeded, Mom would control the family company through Ashley. If it failed, Ashley's signatures would create distance between Mom and the fraud. The electronic production included message threads between Mom, Nathan, and Martin Voss. Some had been deleted from her phone, but remained in cloud backups and the recipient's records. The vendor preserved the metadata and exported the messages with timestamps. Mom instructed Nathan not to contact me directly about the guarantee. She told Martin to route all verification through the family office email. She told Ashley that the documents she was signing were temporary lender comfort, and that Rachel would confirm them once the estate transfer was complete. One message to Ashley read, "Do not show Rachel the certification before the wedding. She will fixate on language instead of intention." Another said, "If she refuses privately, she will look selfish. If she refuses in public, she will look cruel. Either way, the family will finally see her clearly." I had spent years wondering whether Mom truly believed the things she said about me. The messages gave me an answer I did not want. Sometimes she believed them. Sometimes she selected whichever version would move another person where she wanted them. The production also included several WhatsApp voice messages because Mom preferred speaking to typing. Ashley had complained about that habit at the wedding. The earliest messages were ordinary. Mom discussing flowers, seating charts, and charity events. Her voice was relaxed, familiar, unmistakable. Then the vendor found a voice message she had sent to Martin Voss 4 days before the wedding. It lasted 47 seconds. The original file remained on Martin's phone and in his cloud backup. His counsel produced it under the discovery order. A forensic examiner verified the timestamp, sender account, and file hash. No one had secretly recorded Mom. She had created the evidence herself and sent it willingly. Elena played it once. Mom's voice filled the conference room. Once Rachel signs, the earlier authorization becomes a paperwork issue instead of a fraud issue. If she refuses, we proceed with the family pressure plan and document her as withdrawing support. If this fails, Ashley signed enough documents to carry it. Nathan submitted the draw certifications. They will survive the embarrassment. Rachel always does. The message ended with the soft electronic click of a recording sent. No one spoke. I had heard Mom say versions of the last sentence my entire life. Rachel can handle it. Rachel does not need as much. Rachel is stronger. Until that moment, I had understood those words as unequal expectations. Now I heard what they had become. Permission. She had not simply believed I would survive what she did. She had used my ability to survive as a reason to do it. Ashley heard the voice message the following morning in her attorney's office. I was not there. Her attorney later shared Ashley's written response with permission because she had decided to cooperate with the receiver. She wrote that she recognized Mom's voice immediately. She confirmed Mom frequently used WhatsApp voice messages and that the account belonged to her. She also stated that Mom had told her the certification was harmless and that Rachel had already authorized the estate contribution. Ashley then provided access to an older phone she had stopped using shortly before the wedding. Her attorney arranged the forensic copy. The device stayed in counsel's custody until the neutral vendor imaged it. Ashley did not hand it to me, and I never searched it myself. The messages filled in what Mom's production left out. She instructed Ashley which documents to sign. She told her not to ask Nathan's controller for explanations. She told her a bride should not bring legal energy into her marriage. When Ashley asked why my signature was not on the certification, Mom answered, "Rachel's signature comes last because she always needs to feel important." Another exchange occurred after my second warning. Ashley wrote, "Rachel says the lender has her property information without permission." Mom replied, "She is creating leverage. Do not reward it." Ashley asked, "Are you sure she approved the original support?" Mom answered, "Your father approved the family. That is all the approval we need." Ashley did not ask again. The messages showed manipulation. They also showed choice. Mom gave Ashley lies because Ashley wanted permission to believe them. Ashley accepted those lies because the truth threatened the estate, the wedding, and the life she had already started imagining. Nathan's cooperation began after the voice message surfaced. His attorney informed Meridian that he would produce additional communications with Mom and Voss in exchange for consideration during settlement discussions. Cooperation did not erase the draw certifications or the payments he authorized, but it changed the direction of the case. He produced a folder Mom had sent him, labeled Contingency Narrative. Inside was the draft declaration blaming Ashley. Nathan claimed he had never opened it. The metadata showed he had downloaded the file twice. Ashley moved out of their house that week. She did not come to me. Her lawyer notified Elena that she had rented a small furnished apartment and separated her accounts. The divorce had not been filed yet, but she had stopped using the joint credit cards and requested copies of every tax return and bank statement Nathan had signed during their relationship. It was the first decision she made without asking Mom, Nathan, or me to make it for her. Mom reacted by calling her repeatedly. When Ashley stopped answering, Mom sent voice messages. She said Nathan was sacrificing her to save himself. She said I had always wanted to separate them. She said the family needed one unified story before outsiders defined them. Then she sent instructions. Ashley should state that Nathan had accessed the red folder without permission. She should say he created the family office email. She should say she signed the lender certification because he threatened to cancel the wedding. She should deny knowing the estate was intended as collateral. None of those statements matched the messages already preserved. Ashley forwarded the voice messages to her attorney. Mom then attempted to transfer most of Harrow's remaining cash to a Nevada account held by another company she controlled. The receiver's bank notice flagged the transfer before completion. Meridian and the receiver sought an emergency order restraining the movement of Harrow's funds and requiring disclosure of related accounts. The court did not forbid Mom from leaving California. It restricted the assets connected to the dispute. That evening, Ashley called me. Her voice sounded thin and unfamiliar. "She wants me to say Nathan stole the files," she said. "She says it's the only way to save the family." I stood in my kitchen, looking through the glass doors toward the dark ocean. "No, Ashley," I said. "It's the last way she can save herself." Meridian issued the formal default notice on the Monday after the wedding, but Pacific Crest did not collapse in a single morning. Companies rarely disappeared as neatly as people imagined. Contracts remained. Crews had already completed work. Buyers had deposits tied to unfinished homes. Suppliers had delivered materials they had not been paid for. The project could not be erased simply because Nathan had built part of it on a false guarantee. For the first several weeks, the receiver's job was not to decide who deserved punishment. It was to stop more damage. Every Pacific Crest account came under review. Nathan lost authority to approve spending. Martin Voss could no longer submit documents or communicate with Meridian on behalf of the project. The receiver required invoices, lien waivers, payroll records, and proof that each expense related to work actually performed. the sixth construction draw was never released. Instead, Meridian agreed to place a limited amount of existing project cash into an independent escrow. The escrow could pay verified wages, secure exposed structures, maintain insurance, and cover contractors whose work preserved the value of the property. It could not fund Nathan's salary, new marketing, luxury vehicles, wedding expenses, or consulting fees. I did not design that system. I did not control the escrow. I did not choose which invoices were paid. My only role was to confirm that I would not oppose court-approved payments to legitimate workers merely because Pacific Crest had harmed me. Nathan's lawyer called that inconsistent. If I believed the loan was fraudulent, he argued, I should want the entire project shut down. If I allowed work to continue, then perhaps I had always intended to support it. Elena answered before I did. Miss Hart's refusal to punish innocent contractors is not ratification of a forged guarantee. That sentence appeared in the hearing transcript. It mattered because Nathan kept trying to turn restraint into consent. He had spent months assuming that if enough people depended on the project, I would eventually be forced to rescue it. Even after the fraud surfaced, he still believed concern for others could be used against me. The judge appointed the receiver on a continuing basis and authorized a controlled marketing process for the development. Pacific Crest would not be returned to Nathan simply because he understood the project better than anyone else. He had used that expertise to continue drawing money after being warned. The same knowledge that made him useful also made his decisions harder to excuse. Ashley began cooperating through her independent attorney. She provided the older phone, the certification she signed, messages from Mom, and records showing which wedding expenses Nathan had paid from accounts she believed were personal. Her cooperation did not make the certification true. It did not erase the text she sent the wedding planner. It did not change the fact that she had known I refused and had still arranged to pressure me in public. Her attorney negotiated with Meridian and the receiver based on what she had not known, what she had benefited from, and what she was now willing to disclose. Ashley agreed to surrender the leased car. She authorized the sale of jewelry purchased with project funds. She gave up any interest in Vale Hart Coastal Holdings and accepted that she could not claim the estate transfer had ever been valid. She also agreed to repay part of the wedding expenses through a structured civil settlement if the tracing analysis confirmed those payments came from restricted accounts. I did not pay her attorney. I did not negotiate her settlement. When she called to ask whether a provision sounded fair, I told her to ask the lawyer she had hired. You understand the numbers better than I do, she said. That is why you need advice from someone whose duty is to you, not from the sister you tried to take property from. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, I understand. Months earlier, she would have called that cruel. Now she wrote down the question for her attorney. Nathan's cooperation began for a different reason. The receiver had found the consulting agreement with Harrow Advisory. The bank records tied Harrow to Mom. The voice message showed that she expected Nathan and Ashley to carry the blame if the plan failed. Nathan realized Linda had not merely persuaded him to use questionable paperwork. She had prepared to describe him as the sole architect of it. He produced additional emails, draw files, internal notes, and messages with Martin Voss. He admitted that he knew direct confirmation from me had never occurred. He admitted that Rebecca Sloan warned him before the third draw. He admitted that he continued signing borrower certifications because he believed a successful project would give him leverage to obtain my approval later. His cooperation helped clarify the record. It did not save his company. The receiver recommended selling the development to an independent builder with enough capital to complete it. The sale process took months. Buyers reviewed construction defects, unpaid claims, permits, deposits, environmental reports, and the cost of finishing the remaining units. Nathan objected to every proposal that removed his name from the project. He wanted to remain as a consultant. The receiver refused. He wanted the buyer to retain the Pacific Crest brand. The buyer refused. He wanted a success fee if the completed units sold above projections. Meridian refused. At one hearing, Nathan's attorney argued that the development existed because of his vision. The receiver answered, "The project may survive despite his management. That does not entitle him to control its future." By then, Nathan's general contractor license and real estate broker credentials were under administrative review. The proceedings were separate from the civil case and had not reached final decisions, but the receiver's findings and Rebecca's declaration had been sent to the appropriate licensing authorities. Ashley filed for divorce 5 months after the wedding. She did not announce it to the family. Her attorney filed the petition, served Nathan through counsel, and began gathering financial disclosures. There was no instant dissolution, no dramatic signature ending the marriage in a day. They remained legally married while the court process moved forward. Ashley stopped wearing her ring long before that process was complete. The Central Settlement Conference occurred in April, almost 6 months after the wedding. Meridian, the receiver, Pacific Crest, Harrow Advisory, Martin Voss, Nathan, Ashley, Mom, and their attorneys attended. Elena and I were there because my disputed guarantee and estate remained at the center of the claims. Mom entered the conference room dressed in cream wool and pearls. She looked like a woman arriving to chair a charity luncheon. She sat beside her attorney without greeting either daughter. Her position had not changed. Nathan, she claimed, had manipulated Ashley. Ashley had taken the family records. Martin had misunderstood Mom's role. Harrow Advisory had provided legitimate family consulting services. The deed presentation had been a misguided surprise, not an attempt to cure fraudulent documents. Every lie was carefully separated from the next, as if no one would place them together. Mom's attorney argued that she was a grieving widow who had relied on younger business people and had never understood construction lending. Elena placed the Harrow agreement on the table, then the handwritten guarantee drafts, then the email Mom sent on the morning of the wedding. Once the estate is transferred, the earlier authorization won't matter. Mom said the sentence referred to family confusion, not fraud. Elena asked what earlier authorization meant. Mom said she could not remember. The receiver's attorney presented Harrow's payment history. Mom said she had earned the fees. He asked what work she performed. She described meetings, introductions, emotional labor, and maintaining family unity. No one laughed. The strongest evidence came last. Martin Voss's counsel had already stipulated that the WhatsApp file was produced from his device and cloud backup. A neutral examiner had verified the sender account, timestamp, and file hash. Martin had confirmed he received it directly from Linda. The recording played through the conference room speakers. Mom's voice was calm. Once Rachel signs, the earlier authorization becomes a paperwork issue instead of a fraud issue. If she refuses, we proceed with the family pressure plan and document her as withdrawing support. If this fails, Ashley signed enough documents to carry it. Nathan submitted the draw certifications. They will survive the embarrassment. Rachel always does. Ashley sat motionless beside her attorney. Mom reached toward the speaker as if she could stop a message that had already ended. That was taken out of context. Martin spoke for the first time. It wasn't. Mom turned toward him. You told me the structure was legal. I told you a real contribution could replace collateral. I did not tell you a forged guarantee became legal after the fact. You prepared the documents, based on records you provided. Nathan looked at Mom. You drafted a declaration blaming Ashley. You signed the draws. You told me Rachel had authorized the family. She had. No, I said. I had not. Mom finally looked at me. Her expression carried the same certainty she had worn at the wedding, but there was less power behind it now. The documents sat between us. No ballroom, champagne glass, or grieving widow story could move them. Ashley pushed her chair back slightly. You didn't protect me, she said. Mom's face softened at once. Sweetheart, everything I did was to protect your future. You wrote that I took Rachel's files. I prepared possibilities because Nathan was reckless. You told Martin I had signed enough documents to carry it. You would never have gone to prison. Ashley stared at her. That is your defense? I knew we could resolve it before anything reached that point. You kept me close enough to use. Mom's voice sharpened. I gave you the life your sister tried to deny you. No, you gave me her property in your head and taught me to hate her for keeping it. Mom turned toward me. This is what you wanted. I wanted my name removed from a loan I did not sign. You turned Ashley against me. I showed her what you said. You destroyed her marriage. Nathan made his own decisions. You ruined the project. Your guarantee package helped ruin it. She rose from her chair before her attorney could stop her. You chose money over your family. I remained seated. You spent years teaching us that love meant taking sides, I said. I'm done choosing between being your victim and being Ashley's rescuer." The room stayed quiet. Mom looked at Ashley, waiting for the daughter who had always followed her to stand. Ashley did not move. The settlement did not end every case that day. It established a framework. Harrow's remaining funds stayed frozen pending distribution and claims. Mom agreed to disclose related entities and not transfer identified assets while negotiations continued. Meridian preserved its right to refer evidence to law enforcement and regulatory agencies. Nathan surrendered control of Pacific Crest and agreed not to interfere with the sale. His personal assets remained subject to claims and settlement negotiations. Ashley accepted responsibility for the false certification and traced benefits without admitting conduct she had not committed. Her cooperation would be considered in resolving civil claims. My guarantee remained formally disputed until Meridian completed its internal rescission process and the court approved the settlement terms. 2 months later, the project was sold to an independent developer. The approved distribution followed the legal priorities established by the court. Receiver expenses, required taxes and insurance, secured claims, valid mechanics liens, buyer protections, and other approved creditors. Meridian accepted a negotiated loss. No money went to Nathan, Ashley, Mom, or Harrow. Pacific Crest's name disappeared from the project signs. Nathan's name disappeared from the website. The development survived. His version of himself did not. After the April conference, Ashley and I stood outside the building while our attorneys remained upstairs. She looked smaller without the gown, the estate plans, and Mom speaking for her. She had lost the car, most of the jewelry, the marriage she thought she understood, and the future she had announced before it belonged to her. I had not taken those things from her. She had begun to understand that. "When this is over," she asked, "do I still have a sister?" I looked at her for a long moment. That depends on who you become when no one is left to rescue you. 9 months after Ashley's wedding, Meridian signed a civil settlement, acknowledging that the guarantee bearing my copied signature was unenforceable against me. Heart Pacific Holdings still owned the Malibu estate. No lien from Nathan's project touched it. No family company held an interest in it. The deed stained with champagne remained sealed in Elena's evidence box, beside photographs of the red leather folder and certified copies of the documents Mom had kept inside it. The house was mine in exactly the way my family had spent years pretending nothing could be mine. That did not mean every legal process had ended. The independent developer completed its purchase of the Pacific Crest project in June. Court-approved payments went first to receivership expenses, taxes, insurance, secured claims, valid construction liens, and buyer protections. Meridian absorbed a loss. The contractors received more than they would have if the property had been abandoned. Nathan, Mom, Ashley, and Harrow Advisory received nothing. Pacific Crest was dissolved. Nathan's general contractor license was suspended for 3 years after the state licensing board reviewed the false draw certifications and his refusal to verify the guarantor. His real estate broker license remained under separate restrictions. He sold his house, surrendered most of his investment accounts, and entered a repayment agreement for claims that bankruptcy could not immediately erase. He was no longer the developer whose name appeared on renderings and champagne menus. He was a man whose professional record now contained the sentence he had spent months avoiding. He continued requesting funds after receiving written notice that the guarantor's authorization was questionable. Ashley's divorce was still pending. She and Nathan had no children, so custody was not involved, but the financial disclosures were extensive. Every wedding payment, vehicle expense, joint account, and transfer from Pacific Crest had to be traced. Ashley had surrendered the leased car. The jewelry purchased with project money was sold. She agreed to monthly settlement payments based on her actual income rather than asking me to cover a lump sum. For the first time in her adult life, she lived in an apartment whose rent no one else paid. Mom sold her house as part of the civil settlement rather than waiting for creditors to force the issue. The proceeds went toward restitution and secured debts. She moved into a furnished condominium outside Pasadena and withdrew from the country club before its board could remove her. The federal and state investigations had moved more slowly than gossip. By July, she had entered a guilty plea to charges involving wire fraud and false financial documents, but sentencing had not yet occurred. Her attorney continued arguing that Martin Voss designed the structure, and Nathan knowingly used it. Both statements contained pieces of truth. Neither erased what she had done. Mom still sent me letters. The first blamed Nathan. The second blamed Martin. The third blamed grief. The fourth said Ashley and I had misunderstood a mother trying to protect both daughters. I gave every letter to Elena unopened after reading the return address. I did not need another version of the past written for me. Ashley called on a Tuesday afternoon. She did not say she was coming over. She asked, "Could I see you this weekend?" I stood in my office overlooking the loading yard while a truck reversed toward a dock below. "Why?" "I owe you an apology. You have apologized before." "I know, I did it badly." That answer earned my attention. "Sunday morning," I said. 10 o'clock. "At the house?" "Yes." A pause followed. "I'm not asking to stay there." "I know. I just wanted to say it before you had to." That was the first sign the conversation might be different. She arrived 5 minutes early in a compact used sedan. No driver, no leased luxury car, no luggage arranged to make an emergency look temporary. She waited beside the front door until I opened it. Her wedding ring was gone. She wore dark trousers and a plain blue blouse. In one hand, she carried a thin folder containing copies of her settlement statement and divorce disclosures. I led her into the kitchen. She stopped near the island where Mom had once spread family tax records and told me privacy was selfish. "I forgot how quiet it is here," Ashley said. "It is usually quieter without a wedding reception." She accepted the comment without defending herself. I poured coffee, then sat across from her. Ashley placed the folder on the counter but did not push it toward me. "I'm not asking you to review these," she said. "My lawyer already did." "Good. I brought them because I used to come to you with paperwork only when I wanted you to fix something. I wanted you to know I'm handling it." I nodded. She wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. "I knew you had not agreed to give me the estate." I said nothing. "I knew Mom wanted to use the guests to pressure you. I knew the final draw had been frozen. I knew you said the guarantee carried a signature you did not authorize." Her voice shook, but she continued. "I kept telling myself you were exaggerating because you hated losing control. The truth was that I did understand enough to stop. I just didn't want to." I watched her face. She did not reach for my hand. She did not ask me to say it was all right. I signed the certification even though I knew the sentence saying the transfer had been voluntarily authorized was false, she said. "I told myself it would become true after you signed. I thought the result could excuse the lie. That was Nathan's reasoning too." "I know." She looked down at her coffee. "I wanted the house because I thought having it would make me equal to you. Then, somewhere along the way, equal stopped being enough. I wanted to watch you hand me something you cared about. I wanted everyone else to watch too." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry for what Mom and Nathan did to you," she said. "But I'm more sorry for what I did. They lied to me. They did not force me to send those messages. They did not force me to stand at that table." I let the silence hold long enough for the apology to remain hers. Then I said, "I tried to warn you. You didn't misunderstand me. You decided I wasn't worth listening to." Ashley nodded. "I know." She wiped her cheek with the side of her hand. "I used to think you spoke in warnings because you liked making me feel stupid. I should have spoken more directly when we were younger." "You were direct this time." "Yes." "And I still chose not to hear it." "Yes?" The answer hurt her. It was also the answer she had come for. She stared through the windows toward the ocean. "Nathan keeps saying he loved me. He may have. He says none of this changes what we had. What do you think?" "I don't know what we had." Her composure broke then. She pressed both hands over her face and cried with the restraint of someone who had spent months doing it in lawyers' offices and rented rooms. I waited. When she lowered her hands, she said, "He says he took the money because he was trying to protect our future. He says he knew the project would work if everyone gave him enough time. He says Mom convinced him you would forgive everything once it succeeded. That is what the records show he believed. He stood beside me while I pushed that deed toward you. Yes, he knew what it was meant to do. Yes, and he let me think I was asking for a gift." I did not correct her by saying she had known it was more than a gift. She had already admitted that. Ashley looked at me. "What am I supposed to do now?" "You have an attorney." "I don't mean the paperwork." "What are you asking? Do I leave him? Do I believe he ever loved me? Do I give him a chance when he gets through all of this?" I set my cup down. I can tell you what I would protect. I can't make the decision for you. I'm asking because I don't trust my own judgment. You rebuild judgment by using it, not by borrowing mine. She flinched, but she listened. Keep your own lawyer, I said. Keep copies of every bank statement, tax return, loan record, and disclosure. Maintain separate credit and living expenses. Do not sign any statement accepting responsibility for what Nathan chose. Do not let his financial emergency become your legal identity. Ashley nodded. Then judge him by the choices he made before anyone exposed him, I continued. Not only by how sorry he sounds now, he had several chances to verify my consent. He chose the project each time. He says stopping would have ruined everyone. He chose to create a situation where honesty became expensive. She looked at the empty place where her ring had been. I'm afraid that leaving means the marriage was never real. Leaving would not decide what was real. It would decide what you are willing to live with now. And staying? Do not stay because you are afraid of being alone. Do not leave only because you want to punish him. Protect yourself, learn the facts, and choose the life you can respect yourself for living. She looked at me for a long moment. Do you think he loved me? He may have loved you. Love doesn't make his choices harmless. Ashley began crying again, but this time she did not ask me to revise the answer. Before she left, I gave her the names of 3 family law specialists who handled complex financial cases. I already have a lawyer, she said. These are for a second opinion if you need one. Will you call them? No. Will you pay the retainer? No. A faint expression passed across her face, not anger exactly, but recognition. Right, she said. I choose one, and I pay. Yes. She placed the list inside her folder. At the door, she turned back. Do you forgive me? I don't know yet. She looked disappointed but not offended. I continued. This is the first time you have apologized without asking me to erase the consequences. That matters. Ashley nodded. I'll take that. Over the following weeks, she did not call me every time Nathan sent a message. She did not ask me to interpret the divorce filings. She went to work, paid her attorney, and made her settlement payment on schedule. We exchanged occasional texts. Nothing intimate. Nothing hostile. In August, I invited her to breakfast on a Sunday. I sent a message shortly before she arrived. The front door is unlocked. At 10, I heard a car in the drive. A minute later, someone knocked. Through the glass, I saw Ashley standing outside. The door was unlocked. She knew it was unlocked. She waited anyway. For most of our lives, Mom had taught us that family did not need permission. Family entered, borrowed, corrected, decided, and claimed. Privacy was rejection. Boundaries were punishment. An unlocked door was treated as ownership. Ashley stood on the other side until I opened it. Come in, I said. I did not give her a key. I did not tell her everything was forgiven. I stepped aside because I wanted her there. We ate eggs and toast at the kitchen island. Ashley asked about my company without suggesting she should work there. She told me about her apartment without describing it as temporary. After a while, she looked around the kitchen. I used to think you kept everything for yourself. I used to think giving people what they wanted would eventually make them respect me. We were both wrong. Not in the same way. Ashley met my eyes and nodded. No, not in the same way. I poured more coffee into her cup. There was no crisis to solve, no debt hidden beneath the table, and no document waiting for my signature. For most of my life, my family treated every door I opened as proof they owned what was behind it. That Sunday, Ashley knocked. And for the first time, I opened the door because I wanted to. When family members pressure you to surrender money, property, or rights, love is not a reason to sign blindly. You should pause, read documents, consult an attorney, and protect accounts before confronting anyone who may destroy evidence. A warning only helps when you are willing to hear it. So do not dismiss uncomfortable facts because they come from someone you resent. You can support people without paying for deception, and you can protect workers without rescuing those who created the crisis. Forgiveness should never require you to erase consequences or reopen access to your life. Real reconciliation begins when the person who hurt you accepts responsibility, respects your boundaries, and changes their behavior over time. if this story reminded you that saying no can be an act of wisdom rather than cruelty. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more stories about betrayal, justice, and rebuilding your life.